And hello, welcome to the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up. So I'm joined today by Michael Ketting. And Michael, where are you joining us from?
Yeah, hello, John. Yeah, I'm here from Vienna in Austria. So it's already past 7 p.m. on my side, but I'm fresh and happy to be here.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm always, as we're seeing all the comments come in, it's so fun to see everyone joining from all around the world. It's amazing. Well, we are going to be talking today. You're going to be showing us how to quickly port a web forms application to .NET Core.
That's
so
right.
I'm excited about that. We will start, as always, with a few community links. And we've got those links in. I'm sharing those in the comments. And there's also a handy banner for that there. So that's where those links are at. And so I am mostly going to be sharing. Let me see. First of all, we have this amazing video that came out this past week. This is Steve Sanderson, and he talks about this new prototype called Blazor United. And this is really amazing in that it's this crazy prototype, as only Steve can do, which is basically kind of merging and solving some of the problems we've had in the past where you have to make choices. You have to decide, am I going to do Razor components in Razor pages, or am I going to do Razor or Blazor WebAssembly or Blazor server side? And so this prototype is kind of merging those things together. So I am quite excited about that. I recommend watching this video. It's kind of a teaser, and we're going to have him on the show. I believe it's February 14th, and we're going to be looking at that. So stand by for that one. So this is something I'm excited to share. The static web app team has this roundup blog, and so I'm sharing this. And this is kind of some of the updates that they share every month, which is neat. Part of the reason I'm sharing it, though, is that there is in this events area, we've started a new thing. So we actually have been doing the .NET community stand-ups for a long time, and the Azure community, the Azure developer community, has started some as well. So this is the Microsoft Azure Developer YouTube channel, and we've got static web apps, and we've got a bunch of other teams joining up from Azure developer communities. So that's a great resource too. All right, some just kind of general things as far as migrating. So Michael's going to be showing us the hard case, I think, of moving to moving web forms. If you are moving MVC, we had some questions on this when we tweeted about it, and MVC, we actually have some some tooling built using YARP. So YARP is this yet another proxy, reverse proxy, and there's actually tooling built into Visual Studio now in this extension that will kind of migrate some stuff over for you. So pretty nice experience. What's nice about this too is it does an incremental migration. So with incremental migration, you've got a reverse proxy, and you basically set that up, and it sends all your traffic back to your legacy application, and then you can start porting over little bits of it at a time. And I've actually used it on a website at work, and it worked. I couldn't believe it almost. So that's exciting to see. Again, that's for some specific cases. They have their incremental migration. This is for mostly focused at MVC and API. And then they also have some migration tooling for other things they're working on, like, for instance, Xamarin to Maui, et cetera. And there's an entire ebook focused on porting existing ASP.NET apps to .NET 6. And then, once you're there, from 6 to 7 is pretty quick. But this there's a lot of stuff that this goes into, including like the architectural differences. So, difference in app startup and difference in a lot of different cases. So this is a really helpful ebook, and that is included in the links. One other thing, only kind of related, but just as we're talking about migrating legacy applications to Core, this is something that the team published recently. This is for Windows Forms, not web forms, Windows Forms. But this is a pretty great walkthrough that shows using the patterns. So in this application, they take this guide. They say, first of all, take your application and use MVVM pattern, and then you can use that to port your Windows Forms application. And it's a lot easier if you're using a kind of custom or a standard pattern first. So this guide, they're using MVVM, and then they're also using the community toolkit. So it's a relatively advanced guide, but it does walk through a scenario. And most of the things that we've been sharing with us lately have been based on real world examples where we're helping customers go through something. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I will turn it over to you, Michael. So should I go ahead and share your screen?
Yeah, that's okay.
All right, let's do that.
Good. So, yeah, I'm going to be talking today about how with CoreForms, what it is, I'm going to tell you in a moment, will help you porting your ASP.NET Web Forms application to .NET 7 in 7 minutes. I have timed myself, or rather than checked what actually the total change that was. And it might be a bit hyperbole because it could be less than 7 minutes, but .NET 7 in 7 minutes sounds really great, so it's 7 minutes. John also mentioned that he'd like to do some introductory talk with me first, so I've also got this covered in the presentation, and we can, there it is. So a bit about me. Some reasons why you're all here, why actually CoreForms is something you might be interested in, how you're going to be working with CoreForms, and some closing words, of course. Yeah, so the fun part of the talk about me. And John, if you have any more deeper questions, etc., please feel free to jump in. I've just hit a couple of talking points.
Sure.
So I'm a software architect in Vienna, in Austria, with the company Rubicon IT. I've joined way back when in 2004, fresh after university, my first job, and I'm still here. And
That's
I'm
impressive.
going to, yes?
That's very impressive.
Yeah. Thanks. We have quite a few people who are here, some people who are even longer with the company, or with the group of people who founded the company. It's probably going to be not quite 30 years yet for the real hardcore members, but it's getting close to this for the people who know each other. And I'm going to talk about Rubicon in a moment, a few words. Yeah, so what I'm doing is basically, I'm the lead for the development of the Remotion framework, which is a full stack framework. And it goes back way, way, way back to .NET 1.1. I think we already were on 1.1 when I started, so it's not 1.0, but yeah, way, way, way back when. And the framework and we grew up together in the job. So it's also open source on GitHub. And there is a couple of fun things I have on the next page about this. Yeah. Is there anything else I should mention, talk about?
No, that makes sense. Yeah, Remotion sounds familiar. It's been a while since I've looked, but yeah.
So that's going to come on the next page then.
All right.
So, okay, Rubicon itself is it's an Austrian-based software company. We also have offices in Bern and in Berlin. What we're doing is custom solution development, and we build products, software products in the public and private sector. So our customers, I mean, you can, if you're interested, can check all this stuff out on the homepage. It's the Swiss government, for instance, with 30,000 users, is running on a records management system we have developed, etc. We do a lot of finding stuff. That's when you're losing things, and that's also pretty hard. We are in Austria in several departments, Department of Interior, etc. And now to the really fun stuff for the open source talks. One thing is we have a spin-off, SignPath, that basically is been created to solve the problem of how to securely sign code. Because with code signing, you always have the problem, where do you secure your private key so it doesn't fall into bad, into evil hands? And SignPath is taking care of securing the key and establishing a workflow and authentication mechanisms and double checks and guards. So only the authorized system is able to submit signing requests. And why is it interesting also for open source and not just for companies? Well, when you're in GitHub, we have a program where open source projects get their signing for free. For instance, GitHub Extensions is part of this, and several others. So there's, if anybody has applications that are deployed on the desktop and not just on the server, well, server signing is also important, but even more important is the desktop signing. They should check this out. And as I said, for open source, there's a free program, so it's more spread the word. And the other thing is, also now, not yet 10 years ago, Microsoft contacted us about our link provider. We have with Relink. It's in the full lingo, it's remotion.link. Which takes care of processing the C#, what the C# compiler generates, the expression trees, and gives you a meta model that looks more like the original C#. And that worked great for writing link providers. So the Entity Framework core team contacted us, and we did the link infrastructure based on Relink with them during the first 2 iterations of Entity Framework core. Later on, most of the third-party dependencies moved to in-house dependencies with Microsoft, so it's no longer integrated, but it was a fun ride back in 2014, I think it was.
Yeah, wow.
And got to know a couple of great guys at Microsoft via email and probably some talks.
Nice.
Yeah. Good. That's about me and our company. And I think we are now, to the question, why actually CoreForms? And John already warned me, some of you guys might be checking in on your mobile phones. So I've tried to keep the text really large and only have a few things in the slides. It's not always going to be this large, but well, why do we do CoreForms? Because ASP.NET Web Forms is not available on .NET. That's the simple answer. There is, of course, a bit of a longer answer. And that's back in, so 15 to 20 years ago, line of business applications, the stuff companies are building in-house and spending years and years and years of work on this with smaller and larger teams. Or some may even build products for this. Well, a lot of people back in the 2000s said, hey, cool, ASP.NET Web Forms. Now we no longer have to build our applications using ASP, the active server pages, or use Perl to build our applications. We have a great framework and a great software stack, and it feels like WinForms development, and it's the best thing ever. And it was a great time until it wasn't, because these days, .NET Framework is not the newest thing anymore on the block, and I'm going to circle back to this. Those applications. One thing we have with the code behind and with the model is you learn how to build applications while you build the applications. So code behind and business logic, it's pretty much intertwined, and you move from one page to the next. It's all, you can't really pull it apart without rewriting everything. And if you want to rewrite it, well, the history evolved over decades. So most of the truth is usually in the code with these applications. And what do you do when you have millions of lines of code and tens of person years of development effort and tens of person years? Well, I've tried to stay on the conservative side. But if you take a 10 people team and let them work for 10 years.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you need to port this to a different web stack on a different runtime? Well, Big Bang migration is something you also see during public biddings quite a lot. And everybody always suggested, people try it. Do they try it successfully? Experience tells you you need money and sleepless nights to be successful, because a million lines of code doesn't rewrite itself in a day. And if you sit there and rewrite your application over the next 2 years, what do you do with the business requirements that come in during this time? Do you have a moving target? What stuff can you cut, etc., etc.? So that's the big problem. And that's also something the Microsoft migration, donut migration is trying to solve, of course. So the other option is you just don't do it. You stick with Web Forms because Microsoft said, hey, as long as .NET Framework is available, Web Forms will be available, and .NET Framework is part of Windows, and it's not been discontinued in Server 2022. And I don't know what Microsoft is planning, but I would be surprised if it's going to be discontinued in, what will be the next one, 25, 27?
Yeah.
So, and those servers are going to run for the next 10 years anyway. So, well,
it keeps getting pushed out, right? Yeah.
You're going to be safe until 2040. And actually 2038 is the isn't 2038 the Linux epoch ending? So we're going to be safe till the end of the world anyway. So all is good. Except developers, they like to play with shiny things. I remember when I saw the cool new syntax in C# and then read, okay, not supported in .NET Framework.
Yeah.
You can use it in .NET Framework, but it works. We are not sure if we are officially supporting it. All these things. And the other thing is, and that's not going to be solved by CoreForms, but it's still a factor, web forms isn't really attracting the next generation of software developers who are fresh off the university. It doesn't look this cool, and you need to give them something else, because if you say, hey, cool, work with a software version that's 10 years old, work with a programming language that's 10 years old, you're not going to get...
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, though. It's hard to hire people and say, yeah, you get to work with 20-year-old technology.
Yeah. So the next one is, what else can we do? Why don't we just use web forms on .NET? I mean, I've scoured the forums, I've scoured GitHub. People begged Microsoft to do something to bring web forms to .NET. And the developers at Microsoft were very wise and said, we do not want to do this because web forms isn't really the way into the future, and it's technology that's gotten a little bit rusty over the years, and there's many really cool shiny things out there, and web forms isn't part of this. So that's a completely understandable journey. Of course, some people, we are developers, and why don't we just use web forms on .NET? Because it's really cool to use web forms on .NET.
Now, I mean, as you're going into this, I mean, from talking to the team as they were developing, like web forms was built using system.web.dll, which was not factored in a way that could be really advanced well. And then also there were dependencies, from my understanding, with the controls that really kind of assumed they were running on Windows, and that also. So I'm very curious to hear. There's suspense.
So back then in the early 2019, my colleagues and we started to ask the question: why can't we use web forms on .NET? Because we know out there is these line of business applications. People have this need. Everybody's always talking about it. How can we help the world? How can we make things better? And well, it's now 2023, and we have an answer. And that's, you can use web forms on .NET, and that's Rubicon, we are calling it CoreForms. So the question is this the solution? I'm going to show you in a moment then with the Wingtip Toys application I dug out from the Internet Archive. Microsoft published a very interesting sample back in the early 2010s. It's no longer even available on the Microsoft download page, just on the Internet Archive. But it is it's a more involved application than just putting together a demo application with 1 or 2 pages. So I use this then. Yeah, so now we are going to try and get this to run. What do I start with? Yeah. What do you do when you want to get this to run? The first thing is, always a good idea, try to update your dependencies. You have your domain layer, hopefully. You may want to update this to the latest version. And there's a disclaimer, I didn't put it in the slides, it's in the disclaimer on the homepage. You need to get away from link to SQL, because link to SQL is also technology that's not available on .NET. And we figured there's Entity Framework that's still maintained by Microsoft. Actually, the Entity Framework, not Entity Framework Core, is available in .NET and .NET Core. So it's a perfect way to migrate there. You can do it step by step. First, update your OR mapper, and then do the rest. If you're using an Hibernate, for instance, I think probably had a dual targeted version or still .NET Standard. I didn't check it right now. So that's always a good idea. Just make sure you're on the latest stuff and you only have your web dependencies left. There's also WCF, WCF with Core WCF available. So you are good on this front, and yeah, you can really go a long way then. And that's the really hard part. You have to update your CS project file and your web config, and then you launch your application in .NET.
Yes.
Yes. You update 2 files, and then you can launch. There's a bit of stuff, of course. You need to check out the authentication mechanisms. You may want to update your login infrastructure, etc. But your business logic, it will just launch. So just let me check what we have next. Yeah, we are now off to the demo. So the quick question is, should I do it step by step, or should I just launch first and then do step by step? Is there any consensus on the audience what you should do first?
Yeah, let us know. Do you want to see? You can answer in the comments, give us your thumbs up or whatever. There's a slight delay in the comments. While they're responding, and also let us know anything you'd like to see in more detail in the comments. Michael, one small thing in the lower left corner, there's a thing where it says sharing and hide. You can click the hide.
Oh yeah, that is okay.
Yeah. All right. So, all right, we have people want to see migrate step by step. We do see some. Okay, some people are saying let's see it crash first, and then let's see it migrate. Is this the already migrated version?
Yeah, I'm going to. Probably the easiest way is to just go to this Git history. It's also uploaded on the website then, so everybody can check the migration steps. But it's easier for the talk if we just step to the history then. So okay, let's crash it. Let's crash and burn it first. Here we have Wingtip Toys and Wingtip Toys Core. I hit Ctrl F5. It starts. It's running. Well, the planes are still in the air.
This is the good old-fashioned Wingtip Toys from, I don't even, like you
Toys.
said, it's early 2010s, right?
Yeah. So I haven't tried every single last feature in there. Yeah, I'm sorry to say it did not burn yet. So, and it didn't crash. I'm just shutting it down. So what did I do? The first thing is, just let me check. There it is, the Git changes. Where's the Git history? Git history. There it is, view branch history. That should be it. So, yeah. And we can also, is this actually a good idea to do it like this? Yeah. Yeah. The first thing, of course, is, sorry, where did it go? There it went. So, I thought I did this, but apparently it did not.
I do this sometimes, and then I'll have to reset.
No, it's. I did it with a different Visual Studio instance, and forget that I didn't prep it here. My bad. I read Scott Hanselman's talking points, of course, on how to do a tech presentation, and then I did the rookie mistake. So anyway,
we have a question, by the way, which I think would be useful right up front. Is this Windows only, or is this?
Yeah. Right now we are Windows only. If there is a business case in doing a Linux, we are open to it.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've committed the Wingtip Toy sample application, basically just what's in the zip file. Actually, the entire application. Is it large enough for everyone?
It's a little small, but we're not really looking at code right now, so I think that's
yeah. The code is large. The code is large, and I can also check out the Zoom if you need. Yeah, edit a README. You can check this then out on GitHub anyway.
I shared the link in the comments too, to the GitHub.
I upgraded to .NET Framework 4.8. Yeah, some white space formatting, etc. A compiler warning that's got introduced sometime during the upgrade from .NET 4.5 to 4.8. Upgraded my third-party dependencies as much as possible.
I see. So there's Entity Framework, and then there's also like claims. So that's always an issue that when I talk to people about updating, is the identity and authentication have changed over the years quite a bit.
Yeah. Right now it's updated. There's this thing, everything that's central in the application, the stuff you put in your global ASACs, the authentication stuff, etc. Once the application runs, you should tear it out and replace it with modern stuff that's natively supported on ASP.NET MVC, because it's much easier to have an authentication that's really natively integrated with your platform and not the old stuff that's, well, a bit smelly now. And the one thing I didn't upgrade is mainly for convenience. I didn't upgrade the Bootstrap because I did not want to check out the breaking changes between Bootstrap versions 3 and 4 and then 5. So I just left it there.
Yeah.
But
I've run into that recently too. Bootstrap has changed kind of significantly from 3 to 5. It's changed to use modern web standards, which is nice, but it takes a bit of work.
Yeah. So right now, that's just everything I did on the Wingtip application itself, while it's still full framework. Then I created my blank ASP.NET Core application. I've already deleted some of the sample data that's provided because I didn't need it. Just left the error and the index page, the default settings, etc. You get this when you say Visual Studio add new ASP.NET project. And then I dumped everything from the Wingtips Toys application over into Wingtip Toys Care. The only thing I left out was the release and debug web config, because there wasn't anything in there anyway. But if you check the repository, there isn't going to be a difference. So that's the good thing when putting things on GitHub. It has a way of checking if there's somebody trying to play with hidden cards, but that's just the Wingtips application. So, and now we are going to get to the more interesting parts. Okay, I disabled the global usings because the full framework application, of course, didn't know anything about this. Nullable reference types got disabled. We did enable a bit of nullable reference types for CoreForms actually, because I also like to play with nullable reference types. But for the initial migration, it's just generating compiler warnings nobody needs. And now, yeah, the first thing I did is added in the transform the packages config file over into the CS project file. There is the way of, well, the ASP.NET the web projects can't be automatically migrated, and yeah, it's just copy and pasting the lines, doing some search and replace, and you're golden. So if I want to count this, that's probably been 30 seconds, a minute, not sure, easy. The next thing is I switched .NET 7 to .NET 7 Windows because, earlier question, right now we are still Windows dependent. The quick and dirty answer is it's not because of IIS, it's because of, well, quite more than a handful of native calls ASP.NET is doing, like creating system mutexes and opening file handles and stuff like that. That was built probably in 1998, 1999 and survives today. So that's what's holding us on Windows. But if there is enough interest in getting to Linux after you've gotten to Windows, it's something you should come and talk to us about. The next thing is, I disabled the warnings that a NuGet package only has .NET Framework dependencies and no .NET Core dependencies, because we are not going to be able to get rid of them right now. And it's just annoying to get a warning for each of these packages. Then we install CoreForms. And yeah, it's just basically it's this block here. The most interesting part is perhaps the Microsoft.NET compilers toolset. I hope this font size is large enough. I used 20-point font with the Visual Studio.
That looks good. Yep.
So is the Microsoft.NET compilers toolset, because we are using Roslyn instead of the original CodeDOM compiler. And you just have to plug this line in and it's all good. Then, because we have a couple of dependencies that are relying on system web extensions, etc., we also need the CoreForms Web Net Framework Bridge. I've also done for a lot of those later comments, more in-depth explanation directly in the commit messages. So you get more details aside from what we have on the official docs then. But basically when you are migrating an application, you probably will always be needing the framework bridge. This can be altered if you want, but for the basic experience, it's the easiest way. We went ahead and made sure that the binary layout is identical to what was on .NET Framework. So it's just a bin folder without the debug and release folder without the framework target version, because it's, makes things easier. Then we switched over the webconfig to the appconfig file because, as you might remember, the .NET Core web applications, they are just executables that get launched, and the executables in .NET use the appconfig pattern and not the webconfig. And
right,
yeah. So, and here, what it is, for convenience sake, because WebForms is still looking for a webconfig file too, we made sure that the physical appconfig file is also known as the webconfig file. You can just plug a separate webconfig file in there too. There's actually use cases where you have appconfig and webconfig separate with totally different content. That's when you're hosting it mounted in IIS. Then switch the target framework to 5.0 for the compilation. 5.0, that's actually, it's just a marker. It needs to be higher than 4.8. So Microsoft, so the source code detects this and says, oh, okay, everything is fine.
Oh, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah. You need to register the tag prefixes manually for the assemblies so the system can find them. Those are the tag prefixes that originally have been in the machine config. Then you can drop the target framework from the runtime. The order of these things is, of course, it's not important. That's just did it step by step so I can talk about it. And here you can also see the explanation part. yeah, because the runtime is no longer the one who decides which target is happening. That's the process around it. For convenience sake, I switched off the custom errors because I want to know what's happening when something is going wrong.
Seeing a lot of old memories in here.
Yeah. That's not a production setting, please. You should do the clean error handling, of course, in the end, but if you're just demoing it, it's the easiest way. And then we are already at the point where we integrate CoreForms in the startup logic. The first thing you need to do is, first thing it's you're doing it at the start. You tell it the virtual path and the physical path, where things are. You can do things like, for later on, virtual path is /legacy, then for instance, and things like that. Yeah, you need to register, of course, your service. And you need to tell it that it should just map everything to that can be matched with ASP.NET as legacy ASP.NET. We didn't call it CoreForms mainly to make more explicit what this meant. Yeah, so that's what we changed in the program file.
So since it's all just running through custom middleware, basically, then at this point, can you like use other modern ASP.NET Core middleware as well? Okay.
That's actually what the line 35 here is.
Nice. Oh yeah,
represent. I've also got some demos where we have Razor pages in there, because the big idea is, first thing is you get it to run on .NET Core, and then you have your, I don't know, 100, 200, 300 ASPX pages, which are hopefully interconnected, but not dependent on each other in binary detail. And you can just say, okay, I'm going to build a new feature. I'm going to switch this ASPX page and move it to Razor.
Okay.
So you're basically doing the same as the donut migration with the YARN proxy and stuff like that. You're just doing it in process. So you have one cohesive application with one application with this entire domain targeting .NET and not some parts targeting .NET Framework, the other parts targeting .NET. You can even do session sharing. I'm going to get to this in a moment, which we think makes the migration process much more easier and much more sustainable, because your developers, they will be working with the new runtime, they will be working with the new language features. They're just going to have to maintain some ASPX pages along with it. But yeah.
So you can do that incremental migration.
Exactly. And not just while still maintaining full framework applications inside it, but doing it all in the shiny new world.
Yeah.
So
we had a few questions come in I'd like to jump to real quick.
Certainly.
So one is Victor asking, would this work in a Windows Docker container?
I don't see why not. You don't even need IIS.
Okay. All right. Bob is asking, does this compile the ASPX forms at compile time since it can't do it at runtime?
Oh, it's compiling it at runtime.
Okay. All right.
The only thing we don't have is the recompile detection when you're live changing your ASPX files.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I'm having to shift gears and think back 6 or 8 years now to think about this. Okay, this one, I know you've already answered some of this, the advantages of migration, but I'm thinking, so some of it is like, you want to use the new features, you want your developers, you want to be able to hire developers with modern skills and that sort of thing. What about things like performance, or, are there other advantages that you get?
The first thing, of course, is the innate performance improvements from .NET. I've checked my unit tests, and when I run them in the same application in full framework versus .NET, the unit tests are running 20% faster. So there is some innate performance advantage there. What I didn't do is switch ASP.NET infrastructure from a lot of string handling, what they're doing right now, to read-only to the spans, to the span model, etc. So that's all still in there. We didn't optimize the code base of WebForms. We just made sure it's running. Partially, of course, also to preserve the existing behavior, because when you try to optimize something, you might break APIs, you might break behavior. Well, you might need to break APIs. You hopefully don't break behavior, but it's always a bit of a, well, there is a ton of code in there, and every bit of code that we don't touch is some code that's not broken. So there is not really an intention and need to go and optimize and make sure that the ASPX page only consumes half the amount of memory during a page life cycle. That's not really a goal right now.
Okay. There were some questions about ASMX and ASCX. So ASMX, that's the what service?
Web services.
Yeah.
They work.
Okay. And then this one here, let me see, a question about, can it support virtual directories for ASCX files?
Virtual directories, I'm not sure I understand the question completely. Yeah. It's maybe going to mapping in ASCX files from another location.
So with, it's not as common, there's the virtual file system, there's the virtual, oh no, so this is separate, right? This is virtual IIS directory. I haven't used IIS for quite a while. That actually brings up another question too, is, does this rely on IIS, or is this?
No.
Okay.
We are running completely outside of IIS. We can, basically, what it did, you teased it up front. We are just an endpoint and middleware inside of a classic ASP MVC, ASP.NET Core application. So we have the same constraints as ASP.NET Core, as long as we're on Windows right now. But yeah, everything else you can do with it. What we didn't, we had to cut out some of the web config stuff. So you cannot do location-based web configs. You have to do these things with the native ASP.NET Core infrastructure. You have to do authorization based on the routes you want to do, and not by pasting a web config file in a folder and telling it, okay, their user XY needs to have write permissions and stuff like that. You need to do this upfront. That's also where they move your authentication over to ASP.NET Core, and then you get everything of these things out of the box.
Okay. Let me see. Question. So I think this is kind of answered already, but a question, could you integrate this with like Azure AD? And I think you're talking about that somewhat. Well, it's yeah.
Azure ID, I mean, Azure ID, it's just the authentication provider. So everything you can plug into ASP.NET Core for authentication, that's just working. And if the question is, can you host it on Azure itself? You can host it in a Docker container. You can host it like any ASP.NET MVC, ASP.NET Core application. I do not see why not. I've actually thought about, should I get this sample up on a demo page on Azure? But then, yeah, well, the prep time ran out. And also I figured I don't want to dox my Azure account.
Yeah. Okay.
By everybody, actually, DDoS, my Azure account, by putting up a demo page and have half the internet load the WebForms application on this right now. So,
okay. Wow. Okay. I think I think we've gone through most of the questions there. Okay. So as you talk through it, there's the steps you showed is basically update your packages, update your configuration. And then there's some odd, like, I'm assuming there's going to be some odd random things that you'll fix in the application that are depending on.
I didn't right now find it. I mean, we're going to get to this just in a second anyway. The one thing is the trial license. I've mentioned it at the start, I think, hope, or just because we talked about this, John, up front. It's not open source. It's actually a product. We do have a trial license for this available that's simply committed. You just tell the system, yes, I'm using a trial license and not commercially. And if I want to use it commercially in production, then I'm going to purchase a license. Because we figure, okay, the real goal is we want to help those who have to stay on web forms for quite a while. That's not a simple, small 2 ASPX page open source project. That's the line of business application with tens of person years of investment. And with those customers, there's of course always the option of a business partnership and just paid licenses. So you can easily try it. There's the trial license, and when you figure out, hey, cool, this works for us, you say, okay, let's talk business.
Okay. Yeah, that's always a thing. Like I think we get a little spoiled with .NET Core being open source and having a lot of free and open source stuff. But this is a significant amount of work to convert this over. And then a thing that I think about too is like we want your company to stay around and continue to evolve and maintain this product too. So that's good.
That's true.
Yeah.
And it's also usually a lot cheaper than rewriting your big business application.
Okay.
And a lot safer. So as far as changing concerned, figured out, hey, cool, I missed one assembly that's pretty deeply hidden in the .NET framework ecosystem. So I just had to comment out the Google authentication. It's an assembly I checked. There's 2 files in 2 classes in there. We are going to bring it over, but it wasn't done for the demo right now. So I just also disabled the Google authentication and everything is fine. And okay, what else did I do? Yeah, I had to add some dependencies to make sure the compiler knows what it's doing. Session state. The HTTP module for session state has to be enabled manually due to the changes with the machine config, etc. If you don't do this, you get another reference exception when accessing the session. But it's right there in the migration step. So,
okay.
Yeah, okay. That's
sorry. One other question. I don't want to miss this one. So, how does the licensing work? Is it per server, per developer?
It's right now. It's talk to us. We set this up right now as the alpha stage. It's we're almost the point where we wanted to wait for today's talk and going to make the release candidate version in the next couple of probably 1 or 2 weeks. And the license itself is right now, it's a come and talk to us. We are really interested, and that's also something you can shout out in the comments, please, in getting to know our customers and coming up with the licensing model that works, because as opposed to telerik controls, for instance, who everybody is purchasing when they are building a small application and they can do UI stuff, some of it is open source, etc., etc. We're expecting most customers will come to us and say, hey, we are a big company, really big company, and we have line of business applications. We are a government entity and we have a line of business application, and we'd like to preserve our millions of dollars worth of investment. And yeah, what can we do about licensing? And once we know just which direction our customers are going to take, we can better discuss a good and fair price. So right now we don't have a public pricing model for this. It's really an enterprise scenario for us right now.
Mhm.
And
Is this something that you've worked with already with some enterprises, like to implement?
I'm not in a position to share.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to ask.
Not a problem. Not a problem. I've thought a moment about it, and no, I shouldn't be talking about this right now. There were, of course, some contacts. We also had contacts before this talk, and that's how it all came together with Microsoft itself.
Yeah.
And
I should say that actually that's how this came together. We talked to you about a .NET Conf presentation, and we figured that this made more sense as a community stand-up. But you were recommended to us by Daniel Roth and David Fowler and several other people as, hey, this is a great solution for people on web forms. Like you said, like we've got enterprises. I'm kind of heartbroken. Sometimes I'll talk at a conference and I'll show all these new features in .NET Core, and then I'll talk to people and they'll say, I've got 1,000 web forms. Like I don't know what to do. How do we update?
Exactly. And if you're one of those guys, come and talk to us, and your future might change.
Well, okay.
Good. So the rest is just small details, not part of the application. The one thing I want to show you right now is, and then we can go back to the presentation that do a couple of more information stuff. Probably here is the right point. So up to here, can I compare these two commits? Yeah. That's it. We have the changes here for the. I didn't want to do the big file. Yeah. Here's the project file itself, of course. We have renamed the web config to app config. With a couple of changes you see in there, but I mean, that's the config file and you need to change it to what you need. We have, of course, changed the originally generated program CS from the .NET Core application. I've added this also from the generated application, and I've out-commented the Google authentication part. And that was it. Actually, during the migration, I was surprised that I had to change that little bit of code, that few code, because I was expecting a little bit more resistance, but no, it turned out pretty well. So that's what you have to do to get up and running in an initial demo scenario.
So people are joking a little bit that this took a little more than 7 minutes, but I bet if you weren't explaining it and if you were going at full speed, I bet you could have gotten through the entire migration in 7 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I figured too. I mean, that's always the question. Do we want to talk about it, or do we just want to get a diff? And
no, this is really, I mean, the amount of work here, because so many things change, like as people are asking, talking about, I mean, with web config and the handlers and the ASCX and ASMX and the, like the compilation and the differences in the authentication. I mean, there's just so many changes,
No, it's, you can use most of the HTTP modules, the HTTP handlers themselves anyway. A lot of the web config, you don't have to change the world. It's just the stuff you do in the web config, the stuff you do in the global ASACs, the stuff you do with HTTP modules, maybe even the stuff you do with your custom REST handlers. It would be sensible to migrate those, some upfront, some as soon as possible. Simply because the more you are on with these bits on the native part, the easier it is to integrate with pure native ASP.NET Core application parts. And most line of business applications, they have their 1,000 web forms and they have one config file, one global ASACs. You can migrate those. That's not where the big investment is going to be. Because if your big investment is the authentication infrastructure, in your line of business application with 1,000 pages, you probably have other problems than the 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
So, but
Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
when you know what you're doing, you're really, really fast there. Okay, so let's switch back to the talking points. And I mean, it's already an hour now, so we can cut out some demos, etc. I leave it to you, John, if you want to skip some of the details later on, because you know better how much time we should take and when interest is going to taper off.
Yeah, probably about another, I'd say 10 minutes.
Okay.
Does that seem like?
Yeah, then we are doing it quick. Yeah, that's just a recap of the highlights we did. I'm going to skip those. Session management. I also got the demo prepared, but I'm just going to talk about it right now. You can check out the demo online. Yeah, we we do provide the native ASP.NET session for web forms out of the box. You just have to register the session module and that's it. Now, if you want to migrate your application and you want to start to use the ASP.NET Core application parts too, you might be interested in doing some object sharing between your web forms application and your ASP.NET Core application, because the ASP.NET Core application is just using a key value pair in string form. And if you have for your work context, for instance, in the session, you might want to access it. It's not really pure. It has downsides, and you should get away from this, of course, but it might be beneficial in the first run to not go pure with the session, just go pure with the infrastructure. So you can actually share your session data from ASP.NET with ASP.NET Core. And for this, we have a new session middleware. It's actually available also standalone. But why would you build an ASP.NET Core application from the scratch and then use a fat session? You have to register it with that session and then memory session object. Yeah, important. That's it. As I said, it's in the demo we're going to skip right now.
I mean, if you have a demo you want to...
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You can take a little more time. I don't want to rush you.
Take a moment for this. Because this is also something that's quite cool. Control 5. So that's actually forked from our internal testing parts because it's there's nothing bad to it. Yeah, here we have the ASP.NET Core test page, and here we have the web forms test page. I'm going to align those side by side. Come on, do we want to do or not? Okay. Let's do it this way. I'm going into the object test page. I'm going to here into the test page. Right now, there are two different identities. Once I start with ASP.NET Core, setting a session, for instance, after the user is logged in, and I refresh here, the session IDs are shared. And when I increment my counter here and refresh here, here we are going from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. We're refreshing here. We are 6. Increment. Yeah. So the session data is shared. It also takes care of session locking, all these funny semantics, read-write session, enable read-write session locking, etc. That's all in there. So that's a quick and dirty demo of the session.
That's a big deal too. When I talk to people that are doing incremental migration, it's like, great, yeah, I can get it running, but to be able to share state between is, especially because web forms applications really generally do depend on session state quite a bit, right?
Yeah. I've read the the donut migration guide, and it's okay, we serialize the session state and push the serialized session state between ASP.NET and the ASP.NET Core. Okay, my session is over 100 megabytes. I do not want to serialize this during each request. So
yeah, And I did share the migration guide, and that does include some of the recommendations on that, but it's hard. And we argued about it internally in the team. We're like, do we want to tell them to do this? I don't know. There's like, yeah.
So here is a way you can do it, but for the sake of the application, you want to get to a thinner session model, of course, but it's there. The other thing is authentication sharing. There's no demo here. The important part is if you have authentication, this means your user submits credentials to the application. Typically, the application sends back a cookie. That's the forms authentication cookie, for instance, that identifies the user during subsequent requests. And the infrastructure takes the information from this cookie and constructs a principal object when the user request gets to the server. Now, we have ASP.NET Web Forms and we have ASP.NET Core. They each have session cookies, an authentication cookie system. Wouldn't it be great if you do only have to log in once into your application? I'm not sure. I think in the Donut version, in the Donut migration version, there is already infrastructure to use authentication sharing. It was added in in the version 3 or 4, I think. It wasn't there from the start.
I'm blank. I'm not remembering.
Yeah. Anyway, so we said, okay, the default version, of course, is you have separate authentication domains. You'd have to have 2 logins, etc. But you can just switch it over to shared. You can even say, okay, the user principal is handled by ASP.NET Core. ASP.NET Web Forms is using the principal only in read-only form. Then if you try to write it, you get an exception. And you can make sure all the authentication is handled outside of Web Forms. And yeah, that's what you have to do. In the startup code, sorry, the slides slipped. In the startup code, you just have to switch the option from the default to shared, and that's it.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, third-party control libraries. There's also a very quick demo. That's just going to take a moment because that's also something that people are always asking about.
Yeah, that we have
debugs, start without debugging. I've used stellar examples because we're using it. Sorry, that's my bad. No, that was the wrong one. It's a startup project. Browser should be, here it is. If you know tele controls, this might remind you of something. And yeah, so we have tele controls, for instance, just up and running. And the only magic you need for this is the .NET Framework Bridge. I've already mentioned it before. It also helps with third-party libraries. As I said, we cannot make any guarantees, of course, that the third-party library is going to work. The basic reasoning is, unless the third-party library is doing something really iffy, it should work. Outside of the talk for later on the homepage, we have documentation, what makes the third-party libraries work. Spoiler alert, it has to do with properly handling the thread abort exception. Because .NET is no longer able to automatically rethrow thread abort exceptions, and you have a catch-all block anywhere in the code where the state handling of ASP.NET is throwing thread abort exceptions, then you have a problem. Telerik isn't doing it. There is no reason any control library should be doing this outside of putting exception handling in a place where we wouldn't expect it. But you have to check, and here too, it's either you just try it and see if everything is working, or you come talk to us and we check out with you if the third-party library is going to work.
Okay.
But
There's a question if you've tested with Sync Fusion.
no, right now we've just tested it with Telerik.
Okay.
But as I said, that's something you can just try it with the trial version. And you can also contact us on the CoreForms.net homepage with more details. We are also thinking about making it easy for people to just self-check for this. And if it's a hit, we might even get the control library developers themselves on board.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what the future is going to bring? Yeah. That was the Telerik demo. And now we are going to be closing. The one important message is CoreForms enables you to switch your ASP.NET Forms application to .NET. You have seen it. There was not much. It's not quite a zero code switch, but it's as close as you can get, I guess. We have a product homepage with CoreForms.net. I've also sent the link to John.
Yep, and I'm sharing them in the chat too.
Just for a sample, there's more on GitHub. Our NuGet, of course, is CoreForms Web and their related assemblies for trial and demo use. And on GitHub, we have the docs. The page is empty tonight. We are going to be publishing the content tomorrow. And there will be more updates in the future. I also have to check about making parts of the slides probably available. Yeah, we have the demos.
Yeah.
That help you get started. And here is thanks for joining. If you want to reach us for CoreForms directly, it's coreforms@rubicon.eu. That's also where the submission form is going. That's on the CoreForms.net homepage when you have questions. And again, the GitHub page, where we also have on the docs page the discussion enabled. So if there's questions, you can about code, etc., missing documentation wishes, etc., you can contact us there too. Yes.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of information. This is a huge, phenomenal achievement. I and a lot of people watching are pretty impressed that you were able to pull this off. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you staying up and doing a late evening, nighttime presentation for us too. So.
Not a problem. I mean, it's winter right now, so it's actually dark outside, but this summer it would still be, well, quite light outside. Okay.
Well, so I've sent the links out in the chat, and I'll get those included in the description on YouTube as well. And I'm excited about this project. Well, let us know as it progresses too.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks a bunch, everyone, for watching, and thank you, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Have a good night, everyone, or a good day.